What's up, everyone? Phil here. Welcome to DSPReacts, and welcome to another horror movie review for the month of October 2023. This time around, I'm going to be reviewing the latest Scream installment, Scream 6, that released only just earlier this year, so it's still a relatively new film compared to some of the other movies that I've been reviewing recently. And the reason I'm really interested in this one is because last time around when I reviewed Scream 5, I said it felt like a movie that bridged the old Scream trilogy with a new modern Scream plotline. It introduced new characters, it bridged the old style characters from the old movies, and tried to push it into a whole new kind of generational plot that linked the two. However, my major criticisms of Scream 5 were that I felt the movie had way too much kind of returning character stuff, and it focused a lot more on them than the new characters. And in a lot of ways, although the new characters seemed interesting, they weren't really fleshed out enough because a lot of the focus near the end of the movie was the returning characters. And honestly, I didn't feel like they did a very good job with their acting. The acting kind of felt stoic and not very interesting. They didn't even seem very scared, and it was a little weird in that regard. So, if they were going to make a Scream 6, I was fully hoping that this one would push the new cast forward as the new group of protagonists, and that hopefully this would put them into their own as the next part of this major horror movie franchise, rather than going back to the same tropes of Sidney and crew. Well, I'm here to tell you that Scream 6, luckily, does that, kind of. Allow me to explain. First of all, I want you to know I will not be doing major movie spoilers. If you're going to watch this movie yourself and you haven't seen it yet, especially because it's the more recent of the Scream movies, you could still watch it after watching this review. I swear I will not do any major plot spoilers, just some general things that you should probably know if you've already watched the movie trailers. Scream 6 picks up a year after the events of Scream 5. After sisters Tara and Sam had been hunted by the Scream killers in that movie, they have moved on. In fact, they've moved to New York City, and Tara is actually in college while Sam is kind of serving as her behind-the-scenes guardian, making sure that she doesn't get into trouble and that hopefully another killer doesn't try to get her. Now, right at the beginning of the movie, something that is a minor spoiler, but you would know if you watch the trailers, is that the twins of Mindy and Chad, who were the twins who were kind of the core group in the original movie, are still alive. I mean, at the end of Scream 5, they kind of get attacked, and you don't even know really if they're going to make it or not. Well, they do. So this is the core group of friends. And as with all of these movies, they add in a few more kind of people on the periphery. There's like this nerdy white guy who just happened to be a roommate with one of them, and there's another girl who's the love interest of Mindy. And so there's like 6 or 7 core group characters to start in this movie. Well, to make a long story short, the killer's back. And it's very weird this time around because this killer seems to be a lot different than the others. First of all, I will say this, without a major spoiler, this movie has a huge bait opening that got me. It totally threw me for a loop. Let me just put it this way. Not only is there more than one killer like there usually always is in Scream, but the killer at the beginning of the movie immediately is revealed to not be the main killer of the movie. It's a twist. Okay, so I've never seen that in a Scream movie before. Usually the whole movie keeps you guessing. Within the first few minutes, you see a murder, and immediately you realize this is not going to be the murderer for the rest of the movie because of some plot developments. So that throws you for a loop, and really, I would say out of all 6 Scream movies, this one really wants you to treat it as a whodunit mystery. The entire movie, you're going to be thinking, who could possibly be the killer or killers? Because as you know, in these Scream movies, typically there's more than one killer. And so you're really going to be scratching your head. You're going to be suspecting everyone. And in fact, again, that's kind of the plot of the movie. This one, even more so than 5, feels like the hard reboot where the new cast of characters are put into the roles of the original characters from Scream 1, where there's the new rules and you have to suspect who's possibly a suspect, who's not. At what point will each one die, or who's going to be the victims first or be the target first. It's kind of interesting in that regard, but of course this time it takes place in New York City. The real difference here is that whoever is the Scream killer in this one has a grudge. They are fishing up masks of previous Scream killers and leaving them at the crime scenes, which is creepy and eerie. It means that someone has a big history with the Scream killers, but how does that tie to Sam and Tara, who weren't involved with the original Scream killings, right? So that's kind of the ongoing mystery of the movie. Now, this movie is a little bit, in my opinion, even more interesting than Scream 5 because it takes place in New York City. This allows for more unique setups and interesting kills. For example, there is a really cool scene on a subway train where one of the characters is on the run, and of course it's Halloween, so everyone's wearing Halloween costumes on the train, and you see a creepy thing where there's multiple people wearing ghost face masks. You don't know if one of them's a killer or not. There's lights going on and off, and multiple people looking like Ghostface getting closer to the person who might or might not become a victim. It's a really well done, really tense shot, and I actually really enjoyed it. I would say this time around, Tara, Sam, Mindy, and Chad actually come into their own as 4 protagonists. While in the last movie, there was a lot of the returning cast kind of eating up the screen time. In this one, Sam and Tara take up most of the main screen time, and actually Mindy and Chad also become main characters, way more so than they were in Scream 5, and I really liked that. I think they even have a little thing they call themselves the Core 4 now, and it's good to have more than just the 2 protagonists. However, if you were wondering, are there any returning characters? There are. Without spoiling, there are 2 key returning characters from previous Scream movies, and thankfully, they are not the main focus of the movie like they were in the entire final third of Scream 5. But I will still say this, it's kind of weird to see another one back who we had just seen in the last one. It's like, again? Like, seriously? Are they ever not going to be in one of these movies? And I will also criticize the movie in this way. One of the characters that's a returning character almost has no role. I mean, they're there physically, but they don't really do much. It's kind of like they're just there to maybe be one of the suspects as a killer, but maybe that's really the only reason they were thrown into the movie. I'm not actually sure, but they don't really serve much of a purpose in the movie. Even at the end, it's just kind of a filler role. So that was kind of annoying. There's also brand new characters introduced. A detective who's on the case trying to figure out who the killer is. And a few other new people, like a new roommate of, I think, Sam and others like that. So there are periphery characters. A love interest of Sam, which is interesting because it kind of has parallels to how Sidney and Billy in the original movie were love interests. And then, of course, everyone knows at the end of the first movie, it was Billy Loomis who was the killer. So does this mean that the new love interest of Sam actually is the killer? Who knows? So I like that. And I will say this. Some of the sets are quite interesting and elaborate. There's this really big set in a theater that's set up, and the moment you see this around the middle of the movie, you're like, this totally is the end of the movie. There's no way that they would have set up this elaborate theater with all this setting in it if they weren't going to use this for, like, the final climactic scene. So it's kind of a dead giveaway once you get there. Some of the kills are quite gory and elaborate. Others are not so much. There are some things, as usual, that I will nitpick. In the last movie, I said I didn't understand how in one scene, one of the killers literally gets completely physically destroyed, but then very quickly after that shows up and has absolutely no signs of being hurt, even though they were the killer all along. You think that maybe there should have been an indication that they were hurt. So what are they, all superhuman? Similar stuff like that happens in this movie. And in this movie, I will say this too, there's a couple odd scenes where people who maybe aren't really even directly related to the sisters still get killed. And that was a little confusing because if you watch the history of the Scream movies, usually the killers stick to killing people in that core group, whoever they're after, whether it's, Sidney or, these sisters or whatever. And now all of a sudden there were some other people that were involved, and it was a little confusing in that regard. But maybe it was just a means to an end, a plot device. But overall, I actually really like Scream 6. In fact, listen to this, because I was not expecting to go into this movie and like it as much as I did. But the fact that the movie primarily focused on the new cast rather than returning characters, the fact that it kept you guessing the entire movie until the final act, and really there was a lot of red herrings and a lot of tricks. I liked a lot of the cinematography. I'll be honest, I do think the acting of the cast was better this time around as well. I think that the cast kind of came into their own in this one and did a better job than Scream 5. All those things combined, I actually not only thought this movie was better than Scream 5, you guys already know I hated Scream 4. I told you that last time. Scream 3 was arguably the worst of the original trilogy. I would say, in my opinion, Scream 6 is actually my second favorite movie in the entire franchise. I think the original Scream is still the best, but I actually think Scream 6 feels like the next first installment, if that makes sense. Scream 5 felt too much like a bridge between, but had too much focus on the old returning characters. This one truly feels like the focus is now on the new cast, and I really, really, really enjoyed that. If anything, there may be one final major criticism that I have for it. All right, there's a lot of situations where it looks like people are getting hurt or killed, and then come to find out, oh, they actually didn't, and it's like, what? Now, why even go through that entire scene of the person looks like they're getting hurt or stabbed or whatever, and then come to find out that they didn't? You know, that was kind of weird. Because you always want to feel that air of risk that at any moment, you know, anyone can die. And by the way, people do die in the movie. I just want to let you know, this is not one of those trick movies where no one dies. There are people who significantly get hurt and die in this movie. So there are consequences. There is risk factor that any major character can die at any time. But there were a couple of scenes that's like, oh, that's the end of them. And then they're just back. And it's like, wait, what the? That doesn't make sense. In the scene, they were blatantly dying. How the hell are they back? That was kind of silly in my opinion. But overall, I really like Scream 6. Well, again, I hope that this attempt to not spoil the movie makes it that your interest is piqued, especially if you liked Scream 1 and you liked Scream 5, but you're like, it was too much about the old cast. I definitely think that this one is actually better than 5 and is my second favorite in the whole franchise. Give it a look, especially if you like slasher flicks and you want to see a more modernized one, especially if you like New York City. Now you're going to see different themes and things from New York City that you'll probably recognize if you're someone who grew up near there like I did. You're probably really going to enjoy this flick. However, I wonder what the next one will be, because definitely they're going to make another one. You know, they're definitely going to make at least a trilogy out of this new crew of characters. And I actually genuinely wonder, because I'll just put it this way, it seems like this is a resolution. You know how in Scream 1, 2, and 3, that felt like a plot line. Scream 4 kind of felt like its own standalone. And now Scream 5 and 6 kind of feel like the end of a plot line. So I'm wondering what the heck Scream 7 is going to be, unless it's something that's completely out of left field that you would never expect. But I liked it. Check out Scream 6. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching my review of the movie. I hope you liked it. There's a lot more horror movie reviews coming this month, at least 2 more, if not more than that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.